You're listening to Entrepreneur Encounter, the podcast where soft skills meet real talk for creative business owners who are building with purpose. I'm Dana, a Pinterest marketing strategist and agency owner helping wedding pros and creative entrepreneurs get seen without burning out.
And I'm Sarah, a business and team strategist who helps small teams and podcasters communicate clearly, lead with empathy, and grow sustainably. Together, we're unpacking the messy, meaningful side of entrepreneurship, from boundaries to burnout, leadership to listening, so you can build a business that actually fits your life.
All right, Sarah, I have to ask how the teams you've been working with have been doing over the summer so far. Feel any weird energy or vibes, or has anything shifted, good or bad, during this summer break?
That is a great question. So I work with a variety of industries and different teams, and some are contractors and some are employees, depending on what client it is. But there have been, so like one team, there was one person that went on vacation, and that ended up there was some weirdness to that only because there was no preparation for that team member to go on vacation, when things kind of got pushed onto other team members. But since that happened, there has been an improvement with what to expect when somebody does go on vacation. But with the other teams that I work with, it was actually a pretty smooth transition from, going from the spring to the summer break, but not necessarily anything bad. It's just trying to stay on track with, as a business owner and being home for the summer, especially when you have kids and you're having to manage that time.
I feel like the reality check that I want to ask is, do they have SOPs in place for when they go out of the office on vacation, get sick, and someone has to step in? That's kind of where my brain is going.
You would think. And this is what I always tell anybody that comes into my space, is that you need to have standard operating procedures to make sure that when somebody does leave, you are able to do those tasks. So, for example, a couple years ago, I think it was during a hurricane, I couldn't work. And one of my clients that hired me on to manage her business and manage her team, way prior to that, I was able to create standard operating procedures. And so she was able to go in and go follow the SOPs and, making sure that she was able to do it step by step and getting things done. And if I did not create those SOPs, she would have felt so disconnected. She would have felt so confused, because when you're growing your business, there are some elements that you step back from. So creating standard operating procedures, it's not necessarily saying, hey, somebody is going to get fired or let go, because a lot of the times people think that's the mindset, but it's because if somebody is out sick, if somebody is on vacation, somebody can step in and take over those tasks. And I'm always telling people, just have these just in case of emergency. You never know. You never know.
I think that's the perfect segue to welcome back to the Entrepreneur Encounter, the podcast where soft skills meet real talk, like with Sarah just mentioning, for creative business owners who are building a business with purpose.
Yeah, so today we're talking about something that has been on my mind lately, and I'm sure a lot of other businesses as well, is bringing your team back to reality after summer break. Like coming back from summer break, what does that look like? How do we manage the productivity? How do we get people back into the work mode from, summer, going to the beach, hanging out at the house, doing whatever they're doing. But now it's time to get back into work mode.
I myself have been thinking, because we have, at the time of this recording, about 2 weeks maybe until school starts back, 2.5. And I'm already mentally preparing what the morning routine needs to be. How am I going to get, because I have 2 different schools to go to. I haven't been to the gym in 3 months. I've been making it work with at-home workouts, but it's just not quite the same. So I'm ready to get back to the gym and die on the treadmill once again. But like, I need to figure out what that looks like in work mode, drop off the kids, go to the gym. When do I actually start doing client work and building my own business? Like all of these things. So let's start with the real talk, because I know I'm not the only one that struggles with this. I may be one of the few unicorn people that are thinking about it 2.5 weeks ahead, as opposed to crash course. It's the first day of school. What are we doing? But what does a summer slowdown actually look for with the teams you work with? And then how have you seen it successfully shift into work mode, basically?
So I'm going to use myself as an example first, right? So knowing that as entrepreneurs, when we step into the summer breaks, we don't have a set schedule, so to speak. So for me, for example, my kids didn't go to summer camp. We stayed at home. So my work days were kind of all over the place, but dependent on meetings, whatever's scheduled is scheduled. That's what's going on. But I didn't see any shifts necessary, like anything to note with the teams that I work with. Just being communicated, like communicates everything. Like, hey, I'm going to be out sick today, or I need to have next week off for X, Y, and Z. But again, it depends if you're a contractor versus an employee. As a contractor, you're a freelancer, a business owner, so you are setting your own schedule. But if you're an employee, then you have to abide by the company's policies on taking those breaks. So it depends on that situation. But going from summer break and going back into the fall, yes, I too have been planning ahead. And I'm like, okay, this is the day that the kids are going back to school. And if you don't have kids, this is going to probably look different to you and how you swing your summer versus when you step into the fall. But there are a lot of people that do work with businesses that have families. Another example is a couple weeks ago, I did meet with one of my clients and we're like, hey, we are planning ahead, right? So she has kids as well. And so we know that the next 2 weeks, we're going to focus on getting things prepared. Then when things start to get busy, we know that these are the days that we have to meet. Like right now, I'm already planning my schedule. I'm like, okay, well, these are the times and the dates, and playing around with the schedule, making sure that managing your time wisely, because I didn't do this last year. I was like, just jumped right in. I'm like, okay, school starting, cool. Like this is how it's going to be. But you have,
I think I'm gonna hop on that train. Every time I was like, oh, I have this perfect schedule mapped out. It was not realistic. It did not work, and it was constantly shifting. So we're trying to also nip that in the bud this year.
yeah, no, for sure. Another thing too that I realized is anybody that is on your team, they are people, they are humans, they have lives. And I truly believe is that as long as the work is getting done and the result is complete, deliverable, it shouldn't really matter the times that you work. So if let's say that you don't have kids, because I know you and I have kids and that's what we're kind of talking about. But if you don't, your days are going to look different. You might want to work at 8 o'clock at night and sleep in until noon. If that's how you want to work, you have to build something that is doable for you. And then now, if you're managing a team, now you're going to have to put that into the factor. Okay, so when do I meet with my teams? When should I work? Should I work during business hours? It just all depends on your business, your team, and the schedules that line up together.
I love, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, that you're being honest about your own transition. I think it's eye-opening for most of us, because I think a lot of leaders and small business owners, parents of many or few children, feel like they have to have it all figured out immediately, and it has to be perfect the first time you go through it. Like we just assume automatically there's not going to be any kinks to work through and everyone's going to just be on board and have no feedback. And that's just not how it is. I think that transition, we have to look at past transitions, where we want to go, and then kind of not necessarily ease into it like a turtle, but give yourself grace that, okay, this did not work out like I envisioned. And so we need to maybe tweak something small as opposed to crash and burn the whole process thinking all or nothing. It's probably just one small fix. And typically for me in my schedule, it's commuting. I forget to include the buffer of, oh, it takes me 20 minutes to get here. So realistically, I can't get into my co-working space, get myself scheduled until like 40 minutes because it's 20 minutes to get there and then need 20 minutes to get inside, unpack my bag, say hello to everybody, blah, 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 whatever else I need to do. So I can then sit down and be ready to like lock in on what it is I'm doing that day.
Yeah, you definitely have to give yourself that buffer because for the longest time, for the last couple years, during the time the kids are in school, I dropped them off at 8. I was scheduling meetings at 8:30 last year. And although there was 20-minute buffer, I felt like I was rushing. I was like, okay, I want to come home and like eat some breakfast or finish my coffee. So what I want to do now is going this year in is saying I'm going to start working at 9. Like if I want to schedule like meetings, like 9 o'clock is the start. Because 8:30, I felt like I was rushing and rushing around, and I didn't like that. And I want to be as fully present with clients, with the teams that I'm working with, because if you're not, they're going to feel that energy too. So creating that buffer, like Dana said, like making sure that you have the time to just like, okay, I'm going to sit here for a few minutes, get my things ready, and then start working. Because if you just jump right in, then you're like, I don't even know what's going on.
And you're not going to remember because you are rushing. And for me, so personally, I kept thinking, oh, I can do 9 o'clock. I can't do 9 o'clock. I am a 10 o'clock because with my schedule going into this year with how they start, first round is at 7:30, really between 7 and 7:30. I need to have them locked in their class by 7:30 or they're late. Then I have to come back home and pick up the second wave of children and they have to be there between 8 and 8:30. I already told them they're getting as close to 8 as humanly possible so that I can then go to the gym. I try to be there for 30, 40 minutes. And that leaves me time to like shower and look like a decent human being going into a co-working space. But that realistically has me, if I get to the gym at 8:20, that's 9 o'clock. I still want to shower. I'm not getting to my co-working space until 9:30 at the earliest. And somewhere in between all that driving and commuting, I will be eating breakfast, hopefully. If not, I need to eat breakfast when I get to my co-working space and then get down, sit down, set up, and like take my 3-second breathing to refocus myself and then really dive in. So 10 o'clock, I already know is my lock in time. But then I have to then minimize distractions because ideally I've lost an hour of my workday because most businesses do start at that 9 o'clock. So I have to let go of that mindset too of 9 o'clock is not my day. And then I have to do all the pickups too. And those start at 2 o'clock. So my workday, my productive workday is really ending at 1:30 when I then need to leave to go start picking up children. And there's like an hour in between that. So I'll have a power hour of like nipping my day, catching up on whatever I didn't get done in that first block with that 1 hour. And then after that second pickup, I'm probably useless to anybody. So it will be light admin tasks, just like double checking my email before I try to end, and maybe doing prepping my social media post for the next day, or pinning content, recording something real quick for TikTok, because that's by far the less like perfect platform that I'm on. Like, I don't care what I look like. You're just going to hear me talk about real life and business. So I don't have to have perfect lighting or any of the other things. So I am already planning like when I'm doing certain things at certain times. I will say most of my social media gets posted while I'm on the treadmill. So we also look at how I can habit stack as well without losing my mind and burning out.
I just want to bring up something real quick when we're talking about like doing those small tasks in between windows, right? So last week, if you guys haven't listened, we talked about, Pinterest marketing and all of that. When it comes to if you're sitting in the car line, they say that people are on social media between 2 and 3 because they're in car line. So now that can give you an idea of like when to start actually posting stuff. Like,
Everything changes when you have kids and you start picking up on those small nuances. Like, oh, why is that a popular time? Because they're stuck.
yeah, we're
They're
stuck
stuck doing something else.
doing nothing. And well, and another thing too, like when we talk about those little windows of time, like you can use those windows of time to slack your team, answer questions real quick, get on a call. Like there's so many things that you can do in certain pockets of time. And yes, of course, we still want to set our boundaries of saying like, okay, well, this is not happening at this time. Like my office closes at 2 o'clock or whatever. Like you have to set those boundaries and you have to communicate that with your team as well. Or another thing too, like sometimes I have clients that like to just send me an email. I know at like at 8 o'clock at night, I don't need to respond to it. I will respond to it in the morning. But if you are not setting boundaries for yourself and for your team, then that's when burnout starts to happen. Now you're like, well, I got to work at 5 o'clock before I cook dinner. No, you don't. You don't have to do that at all. You just have to set like expectations for what's going on so that everybody understands your boundaries and be firm on them.
We'll say, because as soon as you deviate, that's what's going to set the new standard of, well, you made an exception this one time. That's fine, but you don't want to keep doing that, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one time, like a few times, because I don't advertise to my clients, like, yeah, I'm working at 8 o'clock at night, working on tasks, because that's sometimes I do that. But if for some reason I see you're on Slack and I'm on Slack, there was one time my client goes, you didn't have to respond to me right now. And I was like, well, I'm on here anyways, so I will respond to you. You know what I mean? Like, but it's not, it was like one of those one-off things. You don't have to be on all the time.
I think that also just takes a mental load off when you're able to do that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no.
So what do you recommend, I guess, or suggest? What does a realistic day-to-day look like for someone with a team, leading a team? Because I'm a solopreneur and I obviously don't have one.
That's a good question because again, like I keep going back to, it all depends on your business, who's on your team, who's managing your team. So for me as a business manager and delegation and keeping, I don't want to say tabs on the team. That sounds so keeping up with the team. I am that person that helps leadership, helps the business owner not be on. So I'm the go-to. Like they're the ones coming to me, the team, for questions, resources. Hey, I need this to complete a task. But more often than not, it doesn't necessarily happen like that. But I'm able to like delegate, answer any questions and making sure that the teams are set up for success in their role. And then if they're like, hey, like I'm trying to do this task, but I don't have this file, I don't have this resource, X, Y, and Z, I don't have this stuff, then I'm going to get that for them so that they're able to complete that task. Again, every business, every team is different, is dependent on what I do for each team. And, some just want an accountability partner where we just have a conversation like, hey, check in, like, hey, what's going on with this project? Do you need anything professional development as well, just to kind of make sure there's no conflicts or communication issues within the team?
I would say that kind of breaks down to essential leadership skills, though, like that need to be fine tuned over time, hopefully. Like I kind of already mentioned it before, but setting realistic expectations. Do not expect your team to function or deliver 100% perfect like work all the time, or energy. We'll even do that. Like having it be close to like 80% because life kind of does get in the way sometimes. And all you have is 80. I think that's a great win. And acknowledging that is super important because that helps you be honest with the energy you have. I know I have a lot of energy today, but there are times where I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
And I will make sure the important things that have to get done every day to keep my clients happy or my business alive get done. But everything extra is put off until tomorrow or the next day. A burst of energy in the evening or early morning, like it just has to go to another day. And that's fine because I know ultimately it's going to get done and it's going to get done in the way that feels right for me. But
Hmm.
I have to first acknowledge, like, there are times I just don't have it in me.
Yeah. And
For
that's fine.
whatever reason, I just don't.
And that's completely fine. And then like with that, you acknowledging that as a leader, right? So now that when you build and grow your team, you have to understand that that's going to happen to your team members too. So you hire somebody for a reason because you're wanting them to help your business grow. And I keep going back to it. Like you have to realize that they're people. Sometimes they have the energy, sometimes they do not. Sometimes they are sick. Sometimes something happens in their family. Like you have to understand that things are going to happen. And before that happens, you want to prepare for that. So that's why you always need to making sure that your systems are in place. And let's say that Dana and I are working on something together and she's like, hey, like I'm not good to go today. Can you help me with this? Yes, this is, that's how team works. You help each other, right? So, for example, like I have been sick all week. Uh,
I wasn't going to say anything, Amelia.
and I almost did not want to show up today. But if it was 2 days ago, I would have been like, screw that. Like, I'm not doing it. And you have to figure out that balance, brainstorm, like, what can I do to help you today, to help you be successful tomorrow? And if you don't have that in your team, then what's the point? The people that are in your space are there to help you grow. They're not just a number. They're not just somebody sending you an invoice. You have to make sure that you are investing in your team in some shape or form.
I think that's a very important soft skill that most people don't talk about, that self-awareness in leadership with your teams. I know that's something that with all the transitions that we're doing with the podcast, that is something that we built into our weekly L10 meetings where, hey, I knew you were sick, or hey, this is a lot. This is a big project for you to take on alone. If you get stuck or need help, reach out, make
Mhm.
sure. I just already, even though we both know we can lean on each other, it's still nice to hear, hey, if you need help, I'm here to help you. Instead of just assuming the other person knows. You obviously already know that. And that translates not just in business relationships, like from leader to team member, but it works in collaborations. And that's why like touch points are important. It works in your personal life. Like I know my husband loves me, but I still want to hear him say it. Like, it's so
Yeah,
silly. It sounds
exactly.
silly. It's like, well, you know, well, I do know, but I still like that affirmation and reassurance that things are moving where we want them to go. We are on the same page. All of that mindset shift and that self awareness is super important. So we have our head in the game. How do you then help? You know, we worked on ourselves. I'm getting my head in the game. You're getting your head in the game. Your clients are getting their head in the game. How do you help them and their team transition back without being pushy or like sounding like a dictator?
Let's have a conversation. Let's get on the call. When people say that conversations over like task conversations, like I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. You have what you need to succeed in your role. So instead of us getting on a meeting and talking about the project, let's talk about your what you need, what is going to help you grow professionally. Because if something is holding you back and you don't tell me, I'm not going to know. So it's about like having that open door policy, making sure that they feel seen and heard, as cliche as that sounds. Not to go into too much detail, but I have a background in case management, a degree in human services, and I love people and I want to make sure that they are good where they're at. And I think that's where a lot of this stems from as well. So just showing that you care as a leader and getting you just having a conversation, not about a project, but you are talking to your team so the team member can talk to you about them and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. I would love to learn this to exceed in my role and so on. So just have those conversations. And for some reason, if you're like, I know some leaders, some business owners, because I've seen this happen, where they're so into growing their business that they necessarily don't have the time to do this with their team. That's not a bad thing. And that is why you need to have somebody on your team that can just do that for you. And I think that a lot of business owners, a lot of small businesses especially, need that in their space. And I'm not talking about HR because people don't like HR. I'm talking about like somebody that they can have like a human to human conversation about their goals, personal, professional development, and all of that, so that they are not dreading the Mondays, like Sunday scaries or whatever they're called.
That's Sunday scaries. Don't have Sunday scaries over here. I think that's good. I like to treat things with reminders. Like, we all need accountability, because if I don't have a deadline, I don't have a due date of some sort, it's not getting done. It
Yeah.
won't get done. There will be holes and gaps. So I think as everyone comes back into the office more consistently, and I say office, even if it's a virtual office, wherever it is that you guys meet collectively, like, revisit the team goals and priorities. Identify if anything did change, because maybe while you were on vacation or took time away, you were able to get clear on other things or realize, oh, this no longer serves me. I want to transition to this. So identify where things have changed. Maybe the goals have changed or the timeline has changed, and create that realistic timeline to get back at full capacity. So take those big goals and break them down into smaller bite-sized pieces. What can you do over the course of 12 weeks? Like one or two things that relate to that big goal to help you accomplish it and like help it build that momentum. And then I think communicating that. So maybe it is just an email. Maybe it's you start implement. Maybe you didn't have team meetings before. So maybe that's the way that you share that is, hey, let's all have a huddle for 10 or 15 minutes and we go through this. Or start with what, like I mentioned before, these L10 meetings that came from the EOS book that I was reading in the spring. And it's an hour meeting that's done every week, but it kind of takes the emotion out of it. And here's the reality of what our work is doing to meet these big goals. But make sure that you're communicating it, because that's the important part. You can't just assume everybody knows what they're talking about. If there's any doubt, then there's going to be gaps and links, and you will never meet that goal, and you have nothing to track. So you won't even know why you're not meeting the goal, because there's nothing written down or documented.
Yeah. Document everything. Well, you never know. You got to go back to something at some point. So if you're feeling stuck and you're trying to lead your team and you're trying to transition back into, going from summer to the fall or whatever it is without micromanaging, because I'm telling you right now, do not micromanage. There's other ways that you can lead in a way that you don't, without micromanaging. I want to have a conversation. Like I invite you to like talk to us, so that when you're building and growing a team, you don't have to do it by yourself. Just reach out and ask a question. Get on a call. Let's get to it.
Do you have like a communication framework, because we all love frameworks over here, that you try to implement with small teams to help it transition a little bit better?
We have to, being transparent, like you were talking about, like taking the emotion out of it. When we are communicating, we have to communicate and listen, so that when the person's talking to you, listen to them, like active listening, and then ask questions if needed to clarify what is going on. Be clear with the expectations, again, with the regular feedback and check-ins, and celebrating small wins. So if you do see somebody on your team doing a good job, say it in a team meeting, saying, Dana did amazing on our show notes today, and look at our episode going up in numbers, right? If you don't celebrate the small wins, nobody's going to know. But if you celebrate the small wins, everybody else on your team will follow through. They're like, okay, well, if they are being celebrated, what can I do? It's just more, it's like the engagement side of things. It's rooting your team on, and not just saying, well, you didn't do this today, or this didn't get done right. Like, everybody wants to feel good.
I do think the regular, and let me, taking the emotion out of it, I do feel like I need to preface as we're not treating people like robots, but you have to take the emotion out of, like, hey, let's just address it. We're not throwing anyone under the bus, like, or slanderous accusations. Hey, what hurdle popped up to keep you from doing this, or to keep us as a collective team from achieving this goal? And again, the goal is not 100%. It's anywhere between 80 and 100. If you get 80% of your goal met, that's a win, and builds a lot of momentum going into the next set of goals. So start with the positive, follow up with the hiccups, like, hey, you did this really great. Let's dive into why, even though you did these things, we still didn't meet the goal. What part of the process isn't working, even though you did it? It could even be that simple. Maybe it's just the wrong process. So I want to highlight a few things that I've noticed in both of our leadership styles, but mostly yours, is that you lead with empathy first. And I know that firsthand because I've had a few meltdowns on just life really getting overwhelming and trying to keep up with everything. And it was very scary for me to open up and share that. Even though I know you lead the way that you lead, it's still very nerve-wracking to do so. And then you have expectations second. So we both hold each other accountable, and I know that's not always easy to do when we're feeling the pressure to get things done and to grow our business, while also balancing being a wife and a mother and a friend and enter every other descriptive word title you can insert right here. But feeling the pressure to get back to normal productivity is very hard. And I kept feeling like I was failing at it, but I was literally trying to do like 1,000 things and wondering why I couldn't accomplish 10 of them. So I think that's almost like the golden standard, is lead with empathy, when you're in your meetings, do take the emotion out of it just so that you can see with clear intentions for growth and everything, but somehow still have that expectation followed or mirrored with empathy so that you can understand, oh, all right, we didn't meet our goals because XYZ. So we need an SOP so that when this happens, someone else can step in, or we need this. We need to change the way that this is done, or maybe you're not the best fit for this, and that's not a bad thing. We just need to put you where you will thrive, and someone else will do. That's going to sound bad, but someone else would do better or be happier in this role, and we will find somewhere else for you to be, so that you can still help us with the collective team goals, but you're now in a place that can align better with your schedule, your skill set, your everything.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I really do, because empathy does sometimes come from a place of emotion. So we're all going to have emotions, and that's okay. But I think as leaders, we have to kind of step out of that emotion place and have that self-awareness. Showing empathy is showing that you care and that you're compassionate about the people that are in your space.
So if you made it through this episode and you are realizing that maybe your own post-summer transition needs some attention before you effectively lead others, or really just lead yourself, tune into our show for more soft skills, because we're going to be diving into this quite heavily as we transition ourselves.
Amazing. Well, all of the information is going to be in our show notes. Until next time.
Thanks for spending time with us today. If something in this episode gave you a fresh perspective, share it with a friend or send us a DM. We love hearing how these conversations land with you.
And if you're curious about how soft skills can support your next season of growth, we each have more resources to share.
You can find Dana on Instagram at danas.desk.nc for Pinterest strategy and intentional marketing.
And Sarah at URembert for team development, business leadership, and podcast support.
Until next time, keep leading with purpose
and growing with intention.